Hi, my name is Jace Kempel. I am a sales representative for Pioneer here in the area. Cover mostly Freeport, Pearl City, Cedarville down to Shannon is kind of my area. I've been a sales rep for, this will be my 8th sales season this year. Started with Gary and Troy Mann up in Winslow, and have been with Keith Henricks and Kevin Odie for the last 5 years. Soybean population trial, which we did 2 years ago here as well. As margins are getting tight, guys are really wanting to bring those populations down to a level that's still going to perform. So as we're testing out here, just trying to find where that breaking point is on the soybean population. When I first started with Pioneer, it seems as though we were pushing populations higher and higher, and here the trend has been in the last couple of years that we're heading the other direction now. So this will be a good test for us and for everybody else in the area. So with low populations, the main risk that you could run into if we're going to drop at 120,000 population, if we run into some adverse conditions in the spring as we're starting to plant soybeans a lot earlier, we could reduce stands by quite a few thousand or a high percentage, which could also in the end affect yield. So that's our biggest fear, I guess, as we start lowering population. Lower populations seems to be better with planted versus drilled. We can, when you're planting, we get that proper depth across the field, whereas drilled you might see a little bit of variance. Planted in lower populations, we're not as crowded. Beans could tend to bush a little bit more, and each plant is accepting of a little bit more sunlight. We're not grouping them all together so tight. Sure, higher populations. The biggest thing with higher populations is as that canopy gets very dense, if we run into certain conditions with either high moisture or high humidity, we could run into a white mold or sudden death situation. And then also, as the population gets higher, the beans tend to get narrow and taller. When we get taller beans, depending on the variety and also conditions, we could see a lot more lodging with higher populations. Benefits: planting early with higher populations. Depending on the soybean, we talk about ear flex with corn. There is pod flex with soybeans. Also dependent on the variety, some may need to be pushed on population, some we could back off. But primarily just finding that break-even point on the variety, or even planted versus drilled on what that optimum seeding rate is. My prediction is that the 130,000 is going to win. The only reason I'm selecting that, it's kind of middle of the road. This particular variety that we have in the plot does like higher populations, but this was planted into very good conditions, so my guess is that 130,000 will. Again, I think the 130,000 will have the highest return. We're really not pushing the envelope as far as how far we could go with population, and backing that down, I don't see that there will be as big of a yield difference between 90,000, 110,000, or even pushing further beyond 130, that we'll see a big enough yield gap to say that anything higher in population will be worth the money.